transform your life. Advice. Your life, she knows what she's doing. Insight. Advice. Your life, transform your life.
Welcome to Walking Through Glass. And I am your host, Dr. Dina C. Brown. Today, we have an amazing conscious conversation for you. I'm excited to introduce and to have a conscious conversation with my sister on the journey, Miss Simone Oliver. And in a moment, Simone's going to introduce herself and tell you a lot of it about who she is, what she's done, and really share her testimony with the emphasis on the test, because right now she's really dealing and operating in the giftedness space of coming through to the actual other side. So today we're going to talk about the rewrite. How do we rescript our divine narrative so that we actually begin to operate and manifest and walk in the truth? Because not because who we think we were, who other people said we are, but who God says we are. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Miss Simone Oliver.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. How are you today?
I am fantastic. I'm still a little high, like when I'm like listening to like my theme song. I'm sitting there like rolling my neck and kind of doing my dance, because I just think if Shaft can have his own theme music, why can't I?
That's right. I certainly have my song as well.
And so tell everybody about you.
Yeah, well, again, my name is Simone Oliver. I am a minister, a life coach, a writer, a wife, a mom, and I do kind of all sorts of things, but I think that's it in a nutshell of the things I primarily focus on.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so again, she got more to that story. I think we're gonna have to pull a little bit more out of her. You know, she's being a little bashful today, but she's definitely gonna share a little bit more about the roles that she plays and how all of those pieces have formed this beautiful mosaic to who she is today.
For sure. Let us let it unfold.
Absolutely. So again, we start, I framed this particular discussion and the show, The Rewrite. And the purpose in doing that, when I looked at your background and like your bio and your story that is so powerful, and not just for what you've been through and where you are now, but the impact it has for helping particularly other women make the necessary shifts in their life so that they can truly live their very best life today. And as women, I believe that we get caught up in what quote unquote they, may think of us. And recently, as I've been speaking with a couple of clients and we've been talking about and working through the they belief is really you and your fears.
Oh, yeah.
When we sit and start talking about, well, what they gonna say, and you start putting a microscope to your past and the situations that you've been in and all of that, and then you frame in your mind, and then you begin to manifest in your day to day all of those dysfunctional beliefs about who you are. Exactly. And that's why I think you sometimes have to go through a rewrite.
Absolutely. And I believe in rewriting. I mean, let me share just a little bit about my background. I mean, 8 years ago, I was stalked, attacked, stabbed 27 times, left for dead.
Wow.
And when I came through to consciousness even, I found out I was paralyzed.
Wow.
From the waist down. And it was really ugly story. One that really, oh my God. I mean, it just took my reputation and turned it into something that it really wasn't. The person that attacked me was someone that I had dated, someone I had trusted, literally with my life. And so I was just getting married. This happened like 4 days before my wedding.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Wow.
and let me just give props to my husband. We still got married. Uh, Even though he didn't know
Wow.
whether I would walk again or not, we still got married on the day that we said we would get married. We just had to change the venue because we got married in the
Wow.
hospital. But at that point, I had to make a decision. Really, like, who was I going to allow to tell my story? And
Right.
was my story going to end here, or was I just going to write this
Mm.
off as a chapter?
Wow.
and
Wow.
and that was my entire focus, and my reason for getting well. Because, by the way, I am up and walking and living life to the fullest. I mean, I think life is better now than it was before.
Wow. And and as you were sharing, just different words were just popping in and downloading to me. And I wanted to speak to two pieces of what you said. One is the healing
Hmm.
process, and that sometimes the healing is more painful than the actual initial
Oh
attack.
yeah.
And when you're going through that healing process, and when you're telling the story, and there's power in the story that you tell, there's power in the story that you tell
Hmm.
yourself. Because the story that you're telling yourself is what mimics is what goes out to other people, even in a nonverbal
Yeah.
status. So when you were speaking to that, and then the second one is that sense of consciousness. And although you're sharing it from a physical consciousness, I believe that from a social, emotional, mental consciousness, that's important in the process that we're talking about on that journey. So until you make the unconscious
Right.
conscious, then our stories can also be skewed. And when our stories are skewed, then not only are we paralyzed physically,
Yeah.
but we're paralyzed emotionally, spiritually, and it impacts our relationships. And so when we're scripting what I call our new
Hmm.
narrative, we have to honor what we've been through, but we don't have to marinate and stay stuck in that
Absolutely.
space.
Absolutely. And it's important um to marinate what you've been through. Like,
Right.
I'm a writer, and so one of the things I had to do, or one of the ways I framed that experience, was embracing all of my broken pieces and
Wow.
and
Hmm.
holding them very close and acknowledging them, and the depth of my confusion and hurt. I mean, that was the ultimate betrayal. Um, and being comfortable even in my pain. And maybe
Right.
comfortable is not the best word, but just to be able to embrace it and own it and say, yes, this is it. But then what happens, you have to pivot from that point and begin to ask the question, is who am I? This has happened. I
Right.
can't change
That's a
it.
very important
Well, who
question.
am I in spite of it and because of it?
That no, that that's you are totally speaking my language. And when we talk about embracing the broken pieces, that I my hashtag is embrace the journey. I share that. Embrace the change, embrace the journey. And we are all on the same journey, even though our paths are different. But the beauty is that our paths still will cross. And it's at those intersections that we have the opportunity to impact each other and to share and to make sure that, that you're okay. And when we're asking the question, who am I? Who are you? That you actually know. And when we talk about relationships, the broken pieces speaks to me. Are you familiar
No,
with
I'm not.
kintsugi?
I mean,
Okay, kintsugi is not only a Japanese art form, but it's also a philosophy. And I wrote in one of the first anthologies I was a part of. I wrote a piece. It's called Kintsugi: The Art of Being Beautifully Broken. So, in this Japanese culture and a little bit of the historical context of it is that the emperor used to have pottery and things of that nature. And if somebody broke it, because again, we didn't have like we couldn't go to Walmart then and go buy a new set and go to Home Goods. They were handcrafted, handmade that was there. So they would actually put the piece of pottery, if it chipped off, they would put it back together. But initially it was put back together with like kind of mud or anything that would make it stick. And it wasn't something that was attractive. And actually the scars is what was highlighted in there. However, there was an artisan, and I don't have those notes. I should probably put the notes in front of me because I love telling this story and how it relates to our life, is that artisan said, when we're putting, because then when a very precious piece of pottery in the emperor's household broke, the artisan put it back together with silver and gold and precious metals. Now that piece, when you looked at it, it was beauty in the cracks because that was part of the story. But it wasn't the final piece. It was the collection. And so when we think about the mosaics of our life and sometimes being shattered and put back together, it's the process in which we put it back together. And what are we using as the glue? Are we using the pain, the destruction, the anxiety, the fear? Or are we seeing the opportunity, the growth, the testimony? And so that's that piece of being, when you were saying that piece of being beautifully broken is that, how did I grow from this? And you said, I feel like my life now is enriched. And sometimes what you've gone through, it's not even about you. It's about who you're supposed to impact.
It's funny that you brought up the pottery imagery, because I remember at one point in the hospital, my husband said to me, listen, 27 stab wounds, they're scars. He says, I will take you to the best plastic surgeon and we will get rid of every scar. And I said, no, I want my scars because my scars are part of my story. My scars tell my story. And it's been my scars that have given me opportunity to share my story with other people, because my story definitely wasn't just for me.
Right. That and when you talk about the visibility of the scars, and so often we want to hide that is which we don't find perfect about us. We want to hide it. And God says, you know what, you expose it. And here's the thing, from a healing and a professional and even a neurological perspective, when you're hiding, then you're also adding on to the tissue, the scar tissue, your shame, anxiety, fear. When you clean it and expose it and it's open, all it is a healed wound. And what it is, and the power to help transform other people's lives. And I think that especially as women, it's very difficult for us because there's this myth of Superwoman. There's this myth that we're good. No, we're not good. How about the fact that no, we're not, but we're working on it. And I even like when you said, you know what, I was comfortable. And I think comfortable is a good word. And I say comfortable because you didn't say that I'm satisfied. You say that I'm settling, that I'm comfortable, which shows a new ownership of clarity about who you are. And I always share there's 3 things that you need: clarity, confidence, and consistency in your life. And if one of those things are missing, then there's something in your life that's out of skew. It's a skew. So thank you, sharing, and even the fact that, sometimes we pivot, but other times we have to shift. And shift requires movement, because pivoting, as a pivot, anchors. I'm a nerd. I'm just fabulous. I always tell people, I'm a nerd. I'm just a fabulous one. And I love to study how things work, how we think, how the brain impacts us, but also the mechanical aspects. So when I started speaking a lot about shift and why I founded the Lead Her Shift movement was to shift the way we think about ourselves as women and how we develop and respond as leaders. And I kept saying, what does that look like? Well, we as women know that we'll stay in a spot, we'll anchor to, we'll buckle down, we'll support, and we'll pivot around, looking to hand off either to help other people, to hand off to other people, but we don't take our shot oftentimes because we're so busy trying to make sure everybody else
caretakers
had a turn. Yes, and that's the beauty of us. But it also can be the detriment if you don't realize the first person that you're supposed to take care of is you.
And making that mind-body connection is so important because I have to tell you this, because I really learned how to make this shift because what was going on in me spiritually. Because as I was recovering, and I would be in prayer, Dina, sometimes, and I would hear things in my spirit, of course. And I remember the first thing was like, just walk normally. Because, when you come out of rehab, you kind of do a drop and drag thing. And they think that's great. And as long as you can get from A to B, that's good. But when I heard that and I realized that I had almost forgotten how to walk. And so I had to really think through what is this process of walking. And so I went through that and I learned how to do that. And then the next thing was to imagine myself walking and running. And I began to do that. And that is what really spurred my healing, getting my mind to connect with my body because my mind didn't know that my body wasn't actually moving. So I'm creating the neurons, I guess, and beginning to develop muscle memory. And so that is how we have to go through life. It taught me that anything is possible if I shift my thinking.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I reframe
absolutely
this negative thing,
absolutely,
and I do constantly. I come up against an obstacle and say, okay, how can I reframe this so it works for me? And that has produced such a difference in my life, such a difference in my confidence, such a difference in my ability to walk with others through this brokenness to healing. Yeah.
That brokenness to healing and that journey of healing, and that it's on your timetable. It's on your scale. And that when we try to move too fast, I was sharing with a colleague of mine that I had a major surgery a few years ago. And the doctor said, okay, make sure that you actually I've had several, but each time the doctor said, please make sure you rest, take the medicine, take the painkillers. And I'm like, I don't like to take that stuff. I don't like to be out of the loop. And they said, I need you to take the painkillers so that you can heal, because if your body's in pain and trauma and is recognizing that, you don't rest. And I was like, okay, I'll take a little bit of that. But then also we talked about the movement, and he said, well, you need to rest and not be up. And you think you're okay on the outside. You think you're okay. And I had a hysterectomy years ago. And he said, doctor told me, listen, you might think that you're great. You don't see the scar tissue here, but your insides have to heal. All that stuff got to shift and move around. If you don't sit yourself down somewhere and let your body heal properly, you're going to cause lasting repercussions. And so I thought about that now. And I thought about that not just in my personal, professional, my spiritual life, everywhere, is that I had to start speaking that to myself to say, sit down somewhere and heal. You don't have to start moving because other people expect you to move. You don't have to start moving because that person moved faster than you. You don't have to start, we think about that as entrepreneurs, as coaches, as women, as business, as moms. We're constantly looking on the outside at other people instead of really focusing on what we individually need. And that's really important when we're rewriting and rescripting after we've gone through something.
To your own drummer. Moving to your own beat, it's critical. It is
Yes.
absolutely critical.
It's beyond critical. And I think that we need to start, which is why Walking Through Glass, the podcast, was about talking about what it's like to walk through the glass. And I love sharing. People always ask, well, where'd you get the idea from? It's kind of cool. It's kind of catchy. They see the storms. I said, as women, once we make up our mind, there's nothing more powerful than a woman with a made up mind. And we want the corner office. We're going to get to that corner office. We want this. We're going to get there. We're going to blast through. We're going to break through glass ceilings and brick walls. And it's not that is our greatest,
Oh,
villain. It's us. It's the inner bully. It's when we're in those positions. And then it's the glass that we've shattered that's cutting us. Anxiety, fear, imposter syndrome, negative beliefs, family. You start questioning who you are. You start questioning what you do. Am I a good wife? Am I a good mom? I can't go to PTO meetings, and you start beating yourself up. So this show is about the conversations we need to have as women as we walk through the glass. This is what bothers me, I'm afraid of, or this is what I've been thinking of, and I need to really make that shift.
You're not.
And you
not
think
at
you're
all.
there by yourself, but you're not. Not at all. Women do support women. And if guests will come on the show and I said, they'll use that common stereotypical phrase, see, women can't help each other. I said, freeze, pause, stop. I don't subscribe to that. And I want to clarify that on my show.
Exactly.
If that wasn't true, why are we talking?
I think everything that I have really overcome and accomplished in the last 8 years, it is because I've had a tribe of magnificent women cheering me on, telling me like, hey girl, your wig ain't on straight, not today, get that together, that kind of thing. And so we need each other. And that's what Revision Women is about. Having women know that we need each other, but we need to revision who we are and how we see each other. And so, I just recently wrote a book, The Pearl of God's Eye. And what I did was I took 15 women in the Bible whose stories we have heard probably all of our lives, but they've had a very subconscious negative impact on our lives. And we don't even know it because we've bought into that woman at the well being a whore. We've bought into Bathsheba tempting David. And so I took those stories and I reframed them. And I gave power to those women in a way that would make their stories positive and uplifting to women. So,
wow. Well, I want you to I want to know more about the book and share more about your favorite story.
The book just came out in April. It's a really straightforward, easy kind of read. It's based on womanist theology, womanist feminist theology, really, that mostly the academics talk about. Every once in a while they'll preach about. But I wanted to make it these interpretations available to every woman because it's really women at the grassroots that make change. And the goal was that, part of the impact that I hope it has is that they begin to make changes not only in their lives, but in their sacred spaces as well. Because, we tend to fill up the church. I think Pew says that women make up 66% and upwards of the church. But yet we have, and particularly African-American women, the lowest statistical outcomes in health and wellness, financial stability. You could go on. And for me, that's problematic And so I began to think, well, as a preacher and minister and teacher, what is the problem here? And as I reflected, it's like, it's how we hear stories about women, or we don't hear stories about women. And we buy into the narrative that somehow women are lesser, that somehow we are not equal to men. Um, and if God is just, then he's just as just toward women as he is toward men, or he's not God. So my favorite story is actually Bathsheba, because we've heard that story as Bathsheba tempting David, and um, her prize was that she got to marry the king. And that's pretty much the narrative we're sold from childhood, to find the prince and the king and the good looking man with the money. But when I tell Bathsheba's story, I tell it from a perspective that, first of all, she couldn't have been tempting him. David should have been at war. She was doing a ritual bath. She wasn't just standing outside naked. And there's nothing that is very seductive about a ritual bath. And so if we really dig into the story, it tells us that David asked about her. But the funny thing is that her husband was in David's army. So I suggest that he actually knew who she was, kind of had his eye on her before. And then he sends uh, them. We don't know the number. We just know it's more than one, to take her. And that's clearly in the text, but because it's been interpreted to us in a particular way for so long, we don't read it in the text.
Oh, but you know what though? Our pastor, he actually did a whole talk and a whole speaking to that. And I don't know if it was for Mother's Day or Women's History Month, etc. And to me, it reminded me of how we as women see ourselves, number one, and the guilt that we place on ourselves, and that someone else, literally a physical being, is actually involved in creating a situation for us that's beyond our control. But yet we carry the burden.
Yes.
And we don't let the burden go. And then how we are viewed. And I think that's even part and parcel in this. I hope that, in the connectivity that this whole Me Too movement that's been, gaining steam, lessening steam, and whole fem empowerment piece, is that we really speak through, and I like what you were sharing about your book, the whole significance and how this ties into biblical, historical, throughout history. This is not anything new for women. But that doesn't mean that just because someone else was telling a story, that's who we are.
There's one question that is totally worth my seminary indebtedness. And I had a professor who's now dean at Howard University, Yolanda Pierce, and she asked the question. She says, whose interest does it serve to interpret a text in a particular way? And when you begin to ask that question, you begin to look at it very, very, very differently. Whose interest is being served when I talk about the text this way? Yeah. So that was worth my whole $60,000 seminary debt. That one question.
Wow.
Because it
Yes. And that's the question
Yeah.
that I think every person, male, female, black, white, Puerto Rican, or Haitian,
Yes.
should ask themselves every day and every time they encounter a story,
Exactly.
whether it's their story or because there's your story, there's
Mm-hmm.
my story, then there's the truth.
Yes.
And all of it is shaped by perception and perspective. So it's so I just I what a phenomenal way to like you said, that sense of the revision, the rewrite, the sharing
They
of,
can find it
those
on
stories
Amazon.
in
They
that
can find
manner
it
is so
on my
amazing. Now,
website,
where
which
can people
is
find your book?
www.revisionwomen.com. They can find it at Barnes and Noble.
Okay. And how do people connect with you and find
My
out more
website,
about all the amazing things that you're doing?
www.revisionwomen.com. That is the best way. I also have another website, New Day Ministries, and that's another way. Or on Facebook, Revision Women.
Okay.
Yes, Facebook, Instagram, it's all
Okay.
Revision Women.
Instagram, Facebook. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Give it all. Give it all. Okay. Now, why do you use that? Why was that when you came up with that as a
That we need
name for
to
like your
have a
business
new
and your
view
program
of
and your
who we
movement?
really are,
Why did that
and
speak to
particularly
you?
women, women of God, women in church, women, period. Because the narrative that we're often fed and
Mm-hmm.
is not, I believe, is in direct conflict with what God says about who we are. Hmm. And also, as a domestic violence survivor, I know
Mm.
that the root cause of
Mm.
domestic
Wow.
violence is not angry men or men with weapons or people with weapons, because women commit this violence as well. But it's a mindset. It's patriarchy that devalues people.
Oh, wow.
That is the core of this violence against women.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think everything kind of boils down to mindset when we begin to think about the way we think about ourselves. And for me, when I'm working with women and with my clients,
Mm.
I wrote Walking Through Glass, the ultimate guide to be sane, sexy, and significant in a male dominated world. And as as that'll be released at the beginning of 2020 in the book tour in 2020, I said, okay, in ramping up, and I said, okay, God, there's an element that
Hmm.
before we start the guidance, I spend time working on the mindset. And a year and a half ago, I wrote a mindset cleanse, but it was a daily dropped in your email at 5 a.m. Here's your action for the day, 28-day mindset cleanse to help, again, give you that mindset shift so that you can truly walk and live your best life and own the space that you're in. And he said, why didn't you make it a book? It's been, I was like, oh, well, yeah, I will. And so as I sat down and said, okay, I'm ramping up and I'm working with a couple of new clients. I have a couple of programs, and we go back to the mindset space, and he dropped again. He said, publish the
Right.
28-day mindset cleanse. It is the prep to their step. They can't walk through the glass until they do the prep work. And I said, oh, okay, that's what you meant. And so walking through glass, the 28-day mindset cleanse, putting the prep to your step, will be out later this month in August. So I'm really excited to go ahead and put that in the journal that goes with it, because it's truly about the mindset that we need to have in order to seize the day, own the room, take charge, and literally live
Yes.
our
And will
very
that be
best
on
life
Amazon or?
on all levels, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It will be on Amazon. It will be through all publishing channels, and you can get it directly from Wink. So I'll have some links to put out put it out directly. And I'm really excited about my anthology project, which kicks off August 15th. And that right there, to me, all of this goes together, because when you were speaking about how things are happening and how this kind of goes,
That's it.
and you don't
That's it.
understand all of it. And God told me in this season of my life, he said, just trust me and move when I say move. I was like, oh, that's hard. He said, no, move when I say move. And so I've been honoring that. And oh my gosh, the amazing things that's been happening. So the anthology project, why are you doing that at the same time you're launching your other one? I said, because God shows me that it's interconnected. I said, oh. So it's a group of 10 women who are invited to tell their stories and share their testimonies and their keys for getting up. And the title of the anthology project book is Testimony, the journey of me on the road to I am. So that's why when you were sharing that, it was like, wow. And part of what my passion has been, and part of what I've prayed about, and part of what I've said, God, I know this is my calling to do, was to collect stories like I shared with you at the beginning. And it's always been my intent to make a documentary. And so my anthology project, it's not called an anthology book because it's a project, because I will be launching in my executive producer space to
and that comes out
complete a
in
documentary of the stories of the women in the anthology. So
December.
That'll be out December. No, the anthology project will be finished by December. We started this month, and we have I invited 10 women to be a part of it, and so we kick off August 15th as part of that particular project, and then it goes in alignment, which I told you everything that I was doing. So on August 15th, the mindset cleanse will be available, which is the mindset spaces, which I take these women through this journey and talk about all of this. Then with the anthology project, December, and then walking through glass, the guide. See, here's what you need to do in the pre-step. Here is the stories and the journeys and how you get through that. And now here's the guidebook that releases in January. Go through. I'm telling you, and there's been so many changes, and we've all, like I said, been on different journeys, and we've had different traumas. And I was sharing with, and even when we talk about domestic violence and abuse, and that sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's mental, and emotional, and sometimes that could be just as traumatizing as the physical scars that are there. Because sometimes when we've left an impression on the brain, on the psyche, because now your brain actually knows it's been scarred. So I appreciate you just coming and sharing your story and your experiences and how you have been able to roll through to the next level of greater by revisioning and rewriting. And like you said, telling your brain, no, this is our story. And so with that, before we finish, what's the one tip? What's that one thing that you would like listeners to know,
I think
so
the
that
one
they
thing
can grow to their next greater, that they can actually begin to rewrite their narrative today? What's the one thing that you would share?
Rewrite the narrative to determine who they are or who they want to become, and literally begin to write about it, because the writing is going to rewire their thinking.
Wow.
And when your thinking changes, your life can change.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that. And I am a firm believer in that. And what I love to share is 50% of knowing who you are is knowing who you're not.
That's
so
right.
Get clear about who you are. And if you don't remember, then ask God, because sometimes I don't, but I say who God says I am. That's what I need to be clear about, so that I can be confident in what I am called to do. You're not on this earth to do anything. You're here to do something. And so get very clear about that, so you can be very confident when you're doing that thing. And that will lead to your consistency, and your consistent actions will manifest and help you actuate all of the dreams and the goals that you are committed to living. And so I was joking with a colleague the other day, joking, not joking. I said, they go, oh, I want to live the life of my dreams. I said, no, you can only live the life you're committed to. And I said, because you can dream about this, but you're not willing to do the work.
Yeah.
Then you can't live that life. So you will live the life that you're committed to living. And so make the commitments, get clear and confident
I would
about
just
that and
like
get consistent.
To just add
and
these
then
3
watch.
words. It takes faith,
And my
it takes focus, and
move.
it takes fortitude. Yeah. Yes.
Ooh, I like that. Faith, focus, and fortitude to make it happen. So there you have it, everybody. And real quick, I would love for Simone to share with us her website again so you can kind of tap in and check out the book. And then that you can follow Walking Through Glass, the podcast, on Instagram and on Twitter. And you can follow me at Dr. Deena Speaks, DrDeenaSpeaks on Twitter and on the gram. And I love feedback. So if anything part of this particular episode resonates with you, please share in the comments, share with someone that needs to hear the story, that needs to understand that they are the master of their own destiny. And so what they need to do is begin to script it out. And do they want to be the lead actor or do they want to be a sidekick? So they have to kind of think
Connect
about that.
with me
and
at
definitely share that with those people that need to hear this today. And Simone, again, one more time, how can they connect back with you?
Revision Women. I'm also on Instagram. You can. Yeah.
All right. Oh, she's on Instagram too. Catch her on the gram. All right, there you have it. This has been an amazing conscious conversation. And I look forward to sharing this with you as well as the others, because you know what? It's not about breaking through the glass ceiling. It's about walking through it and knowing that you are not alone. We are here for you. Have a great one. And thank you for listening.
Real talk.